Rick and I did attend this event this weekend, CannaBash. Trish, you were not there. You might have made it to such a thing under different circumstances and a different schedule and so forth. But I know you didn't make it there. But you have seen and been parts of discussions of controversies surrounding it, and that type of stuff. So you understand what we're talking about in some regards, but.
Yeah, I've been kicked off of Facebook for a while, and boy, am I glad that I have been.
Yeah.
I could probably use a timeout too, actually. I probably could.
I was just watching the January 6th, the live hearings about the January 6th, investigative panel, the hearings. And there was a guy in there who was caught up in that whole thing. And his description was how he was all caught up in social media. And he got all fired up, and he really believed that there was some issue with the election and that it was screwed up, and that he was told to go in there and get it back. And he just got fired up and went in there, and he just described about how he got hyped up. And then he made a distinction. He's like, that was then. Now he goes, since I've gotten away from all that stupid social media stuff. And that was his whole description in his testimony. I thought it was, talk about the power of that stuff. And we're talking about, in this case, I won't get into too many details. We don't really need to go there. That's not the story, but we have a group of people, all passionate activists, all pretty much on the same side, the same goal, all against the same enemy, but finding reasons to really have at it with each other. And I have participated in those. I'm not sitting back judging. I've gone there myself, and it's just wild to see it. Just nice to step back for a second and review it a little bit and maybe try to prevent getting involved in that stuff in the future.
Any other disasters, right?
Well, friendly fire is one of the ways to destroy any kind of a social organization, right? It was easy. Poor Trish. Bad lighter situation.
Yeah, bad deal around.
But when the police and the state were the enemy, it was easy for everybody to hate in the same direction, right? So we have legalization. We now have regulated marketplace. The state is actually a cooperative partner, even though they may not always do what we want them to do. And law enforcement, for the most part, has laid off of us. So those are no longer the easy enemies for us to all point our hate towards. So Bradley Curtis Powell says, why was there no outside cannabis allowed? That's an excellent question.
Yeah, it's good enough. Good as place as any to get started on a conversation about this. That was kind of one of the components. There was also a dog rule. There were some other things, I guess, but it's similar to any other event as I saw it. Now, at Canna Jam, I will say we don't care. If somebody brings in, some cannabis. The last float production I went to, they didn't care if people brought in their own, can, as long as they weren't there trying to sell it, obviously. If you have like a
personal use
amount and you brought it in there to, not necessarily buy from people or not buy as much or whatever your plan is, that was all okay. But you can imagine in some situations where, you've been to events and they haven't allowed outside food or outside drink or anything like that. And you go in there and you can buy a $10 beer or, whatever it is and stuff. And they are trying to do that to keep the money flowing to those vendors, as opposed to people just bringing in their own stuff. In the old days at Pine Knob, we used to be able to bring in a cooler and do that, and they quit doing it. So, it's not that outrageous at all. I don't really prefer it, but I will say that was the policy, but it didn't necessarily play out that way all the way around. There are people who had their own joints, and it was pretty obvious and stuff. Like people brought out their own stash, and
they wanted you and you held your medal up in one hand. They didn't go in your pockets or anything. You could have had anything in there. And all of the dozens and dozens of events I've attended in Michigan, some of them have been like that. It's not the only one that's ever said you can't bring your own cannabis.
And it's just not that uncommon at large. It's not that.
It's not. It's
we like to have a lot of ideals and then just get like really upset if somebody doesn't meet an ideal. It seems like. And that's one of the issues too. I guess I'll get into now. Both Rick and Latrisha. Oh, there you go. There's Rick. Latrisha's off video for a moment. Hopefully that's on purpose, and she'll be rejoining.
She was in quest for lighter last time we talked. So yes.
So and again, everybody involved in these disputes and stuff about this event are passionate activists who've done some good stuff, who have accomplishments under their belts, who understand these issues, and have certain ways of wanting to go about protesting, taking care of things, whatever. We're joined by Malcolm MacKinnon. Thanks for joining us, man.
Glad to be here.
We're talking about a Michigan commercial event right now, and Malcolm MacKinnon happens to be a veteran of cannabis events at large, and I'm sure there are some parallel we could talk about. Hopefully, Trish makes it back on here in a second. But there was protest at before this event that took place, a Michigan licensed cannabis event in Muskegon on Saturday, because some of the big money interests were participating as vendors, and some people's strategy was to boycott the entire event. And that's not the immediate problem for me. The problem for me is assuming that anybody who doesn't take that position then is now an enemy also, and is now getting, like Rick's getting all types of, like, whatever it's worth, social media criticism, and you used to be okay, now we know that you're not, and that kind of ridiculousness and stuff. But I'm not necessarily against, like, saying, hey, screw that event for that, let's do that if you want. I just really can't stand forcing that absolute, on anybody else. And all of us hate those people, hate those big money interest players.
Sure.
All of us work against them in different ways. And
well, you have somebody putting on an event. Putting on an event is an arduous process, as we all know. We've all been through it with the Cannabis Cup. You guys were intimately involved in mounting those events. You were, involved. So, it takes a lot of work, and it's there's not a lot of money to be made at these events, but it does support the cannabis community. And so all of these, other vendors who are involved, they're going to suffer because of some protests in the cannabis industry like that. I don't know. It's not fair. There are people working so hard to make a living. This is indeed, as I've always said, the people out there, the entrepreneurs, the people who are working, it's a 24-hour job. They're full-time activists. Their livelihoods are on the line, and we have to support them. And who else is? Because the politicians aren't.
And so people
you have
know.
an event that,
Excuse
when
me.
you have an event that specifically says that their proceeds are going to get donated towards a charitable cause, it makes it very difficult for you to say, I'm going to deny this charity an extra $10,000 admission fee just because of my morals and my particular personal stance. That's really not tenable when you're talking about helping out people who need it.
We've seen more and more of this in the country. This absolutism on all issues. It's either this or nothing. There's either one extreme or the other. There's no middle ground. There's no talk anymore. There's a lot of yelling, but not a lot of listening. You know what I mean? So, that's kind of it's been going on. It got worse under Trump.
Yeah, and I want to point out real quick so people know, like, when we talk about you being connected to being a veteran of cannabis events, I'm talking about the string of High Times events during a time when a lot of us went there and had a lot of fun, and they were cool. That changed a little bit over time, especially towards the end a little bit. But
we were, an independent entity. I mean, High Times made a lot of money during the golden years of doing the Cannabis Cup, but we were an independent entity, and we welcomed everybody. We wanted everybody to be involved. We wanted to make more money. So, yeah, it was great. And the best thing about those Cannabis Cups, if I may say so, is you got to meet the entire High Times staff who were always there working the events. So,
when Malcolm was at High Times, he was the editor-in-chief, known as Dan Sky at the time.
Exactly.
And Representative Johnson is saying we almost work together, and I agree with that.
Right. With those events were the gold standard at that particular time. Certainly
from about 5-6 years, till about 2016, then when I left the magazine, I think everything went south.
Of course,
that's true.
Trish was trying to get in a minute ago. Go ahead, Trish.
Oh yeah, no, actually, I was just saying. That's how I started in the cannabis space. Actually, is through events. I've always done events for years. I have family out in Vegas that does events. Events are really hard right now. It's obviously catching up some momentum, but If you don't have funding from the front, you're going to shoot yourself in the foot if there's no other option other than that. So, I mean, at the same time, too, if people will actually show up and support these types of situations that they want to have, they could probably be more like that. But if you're going to have a big entertaining event that actually creates some stimulation and some involvement, it's going to take money. And that's where that comes in with the sponsors. And really, it's really kind of hard to combat that.
People are
it's from my experience is what I'm saying. So I've lost out on many events because of not being able to find the right kind of supporters or the right kind of sponsors.
Yeah.
And it is, you lose money and your time and your effort. And
just for the record too, the event, there's been a few of these now, Malcolm, like these licensed state events, and they haven't really taken off.
Yeah.
But this last one was the first one that kind of like, I mean, I would say the Canna Jam that I was involved in last year was okay.
That was a
couple thousand people there. It was a good start. It was the best at the time. This one had like 7,000 plus. A lot of good music lined up.
No, but they're basics to a good event. You want the event to be clean. You want it to be secure. You want people to have a lot of fun. You want to have to be informative. And the thing is to really support wherever that cup is or whatever the event is, to really support the local music scene. There's a lot of great bands in Michigan, as we all know. So that's always the way I've looked at it. I always felt that getting into the events, I just really get a little bit more detail. Like sometimes High Times would spend tremendous amounts of money on a headliner, and the thing is, people weren't coming to see the headliner; they're coming for the pot. That's why people come to these events. They want to smoke, they want to meet people, they want to have a great time. So we spent. I remember sometimes just way too much money. The most notorious one was Lil Wayne. We were going to pay him $80,000, and of course, in the first 15 minutes, he walked off stage because the people weren't responding. Why? Because everybody's high in the audience. All right, so he threw down the microphone and walks off stage. So he said, "Well, you don't get your other 40,000." Way to go.
Well, here's the thing. If they had 7,500 at the festival yesterday, which I totally believe, 7,500 doesn't sound like a stretch to me at all. And if they had 1,000 people watching the music at the end of the night, if they had 1,000 people for Bone Thugs and Harmony, that's a lot for Bone Thugs and Harmony. But what that means is 6,500 people were there not for Bone Thugs and Harmony.
Exactly. Well, you remember when Melissa Etheridge played in Clio, there were, it was a very, very casual event where people kind of like people watching from their booths, but maybe 100 people standing on the asphalt watching. That's all. I mean, people come there for the pot. And at the end of a day of smoking and standing on your feet all day in the summertime, I want to go home.
Exactly. And in Michigan, we've had several events and other type of things where we've been able to single out and isolate some of these bad players in the marketplace, the Skymint, where we've petitioned companies and they've taken names off of banners or removed people from sponsorship. And it is absolutely true that the folks from CannaJam Fest, that the CannaBash, whatever we just went to, certainly didn't advertise Skymint's involvement prior to. Thank you, CannaBash. Yes, Jamie's shirt. But they didn't advertise Skymint's involvement ahead of time either. There's no reason for you to emphasize a negative. But by the same token, not everybody can just excise from their event all of the people that we decide are just assholes.
Exactly. Yeah, but things don't most events on a website print all of the company logos so everybody can see who's participating. I know they do that.
It wasn't a total secret. It just wasn't emphasized. I think.
No, I went on the website ahead of time, and Skymint was not one of the listed sponsors, even though we all knew that it was. And frankly, I do a show with Dan Sparrow every week.
He's one of the coordinators.
At 420 Post, and Dan was certainly talking about all the different sponsors they had, never once mentioned Skymint, and I wouldn't have either. It was a smart play on his part to not emphasize a negative on an event that he's hosting. And I think, again, a lot of those 7,500 people that went there don't even know that Skymints are assholes.
So our position mainly was, it's not necessary to protest the entire event, but while you're attending there, don't go to the asshole companies that you don't like.
Give somebody else your money.
There are things you can do. You write up a memorandum or write up a document and hand it out to people about Skymint. You can do that. You know?
That's what I was thinking too. I feel like that would be something they can take home too and read again.
Yeah,
and here's one of the coordinators here too, so thanking us for talking about it. So
yeah, we had such a great time at the event. It was so good. The VIP section was amazing. The fact that it was on the softball fields and it was all spread out meant there was a lot of grass instead of asphalt to walk on, which was much more friendly to the feet. It was all the way around. I mean, other than parking, which is parking's a struggle for every event. Other than parking, I mean,
so good. Here's some other info from Tom Beller. Tom Beller, of course, not only played in one of the bands at this event, one of my favorites, Echoes of Pink Floyd.
Yeah.
But he and his wife also are the operators and owners of Real Leaf Solutions, a great cultivator in Michigan.
Mm-hmm. And it says the event was created by an event organizer who abandoned the project when the Sparrows had to pick it up. And it was structured in a way that local retailers in Muskegon were all board members who made the decisions on how the event was organized and who could vend. And that's an important thing to know. Oftentimes people who are in organization of an event are not the people making decisions like, do we take this person? Do we not take this person? Thank you, Representative Johnson. We love you too. But the fact is, sometimes you're just stuck with a shit stick, and you just got to grab the best end and hope for them. You know?
Listen, there are a lot of people in the industry. I remember, I was out at what was it, a Champs convention a few years back. No, I'm sorry. It was a Cannabis Cup. It was in San Bernardino, and there was a very, very prominent dispensary owner there. I don't want to mention his name, but one of his colleagues was Jack Abrahoff. Can't pronounce Abramowitz or something. God damn it. Abramoff. That was all right. So anyway, this guy was a major lobbyist, completely corrupt, went to prison, and so am I supposed to completely disavow a dispensary because one of their colleagues suddenly, I mean, I don't like the fact that John Boehner's in the industry. I don't like the fact that these people have jumped in, but I mean, are we supposed to boycott everyone? I mean, when you don't disagree with someone, you have to get everybody else on board. There's no reason for this kind of absolutist behavior. Sorry, that's how I feel about it.
It's an extension of personal ego. When your ego says my opinion is right, and anyone that speaks opposite of my opinion is either unintelligent or flawed, or there's some kind of a media clown that is controlled by George Soros or something.
Right.
That kind of an extremism, it just really cuts both ways. Trish, you were wanted to jump in?
Sure, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just agreeing with the Soros thing because it's kind of strange how everything's so connected. Like once you start following like the attorney for the CRA's campaign, it kind of leads you to some pretty crazy stuff. So I thought that was interesting.
But as far as CannaBash goes, I really don't have a whole lot of complaints about it. And as far as I'm concerned, the west side of the state has been severely lacking in large cannabis festivals. So when you have one that's a success like this, that lends itself to greater opportunity for people in our community. When you have a bad festival, then it creates problems. And I'm willing to roast a bad festival. Don't ever get me wrong. When I see things that are ridiculous, I point them out. And if someone's pissed me off, they get what they get. There's no reason to be upset with this.
Robin Schneider here is saying that she was bullied and threatened over this. I'm just pulling up right now.
Yeah, that's true. The fact the people that we originally started talking about, the few very well-meaning activists devolved when they weren't successful, devolved from relatively respectful tactics down to very demeaning, insulting, and personally assaultive. And in fact, in one case, even implied violence. So that's one of the reasons we're having this conversation, is to show people that we can't let people who try to bully win. That despite being told that we were betrayers, we went to the event anyway, had a great time, and all of the horrible things that were said about it turned out not to be true. Mm-hmm. And we want people to not listen to those particular folks any longer.
Right. Also,
they've lost respect.
There's room for everybody here too. I mean, you want to put on your own event, be our guest. Go for it. I mean, it's not it's a matter of doing steps and finding the right approval, finding the venue, and so forth and so on. But you can make money at it, and if you feel you can do it better, do it. I mean, it's a wide open field. It truly is, and it only helps our community. So
William, I'm sorry, Malcolm. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead. I'm
I
sorry.
was just going to read the thing here. We're on Alexa and Spotify and a lot of audio only platforms. So when we have messages posted in the chat, we like to read them so that our audio only people can participate. William Lowry says, I also think you should be allowed to bring in your own cannabis to a cannabis festival. I agree. I think you should.
Always that way. Always been that way with the High Times Cannabis Cup. No one ever had a problem with that.
Yeah, no, and the reason the Cannabis Cup was so well attended was one of the reasons was you weren't locked into just buying the cannabis that they had there. You could bring your own. As a medical marijuana patient, it's sometimes totally impossible for me to find certain strains of cannabis. They're just not retailly available. So
Were people allowed to bring their own, Rick?
Yeah. I'm sorry.
I said, were people allowed to bring their own? I'm sorry, guys. I'm serious. I've not been on Facebook. I've not been paying attention to a lot of things. It's just phone calls and emails,
Sure.
So
people were not allowed to bring their own cannabis to CannaJam Fest or CannaBash. Excuse me.
What do they do?
That's also your choice too. If you can't go there without having an hour or two without what you normally have, then you have also the decision not to go.
Did they search people? Did they search their bags or something?
No, it was a policy, but it wasn't strictly enforced. There were obviously people there that had their own cannabis, so yes, a lot of these things you can bring your own cannabis, but some you don't, and many things you don't bring anything to. So it's not like it's not as convenient as you may like, but it's not totally unheard of or anything. I mean,
as a thing to complain about, it seems very picky, right?
Right. All right. Now,
You don't go to the beer tent and bring your beer, do you?
I mean,
So,
I go to
Johnny,
concerts and bring in my own weed.
The
So
fact is-
I mean, like each
The
their own, I
fact is, there are
guess.
a lot of other events that do allow you to bring your cannabis in. So you can say that all you want, but it's kind of a false comparison because in the industry, some of them do, some of them don't. My point is just don't hate on the ones that don't. I mean, it's not that unusual. Yep. No one wants to break the rules and risk getting kicked out. That's
no,
for
I
sure.
didn't. I mean, Rick and I did not bring anything in because of that rule, but I mean,
No.
I'm just saying what the reality of the situation was. So
And to be honest with you, when we got inside, Rare Cannabis had $5 pre-rolls. So although I I would like to be able to bring my own cannabis, that's the nice price.
plus there's VIP swag bags that had stuff to get you started, and it was very
The dab bars,
Very
a couple,
accommodating.
couple dab bars set up. You could have dabbed till you
Absolutely true.
passed out if you wanted to.
Rare Cannabis had a dab bar. You could walk right up. Anybody could. Go ahead, Malcolm.
Were you able to bring a gun?
Honestly,
No,
I don't think
no.
so.
No, they didn't
had
want
metal
weapons in there
detectors.
either.
They wanted you on the way in, so I'm sure they would have detected that.
Okay, just wondering.
Yeah, and chat. I'm sorry, Chris Silva. Jamie, if you could go back to the last comment, please. Chris Silva said, "I would be open to paying more for entry if I was able to bring my own cannabis." That's an interesting concept. If you wanted to bring your own cannabis, maybe it's $5 or $10 more.
But here,
I'm not sure what the logic behind that would be, other than just getting the privilege.
yeah, but the vendors don't make any less money. Believe me, if they have good product, they're going to sell. It makes no sense to deny the people the right to bring in cannabis. People are not going to make any less money. If the vendors have stuff, great dabs, if they have a dab station, if they, that kind of stuff, people are going to go. You saw what happened in Clio. People did very, very well. There were like 25, 30 booths, in that crisscross in the middle of the racetrack. And it was a great party. And believe me, I saw vendors doing extremely well, especially the seed sellers. They're kicking ass.
I will tell you this, that the lines at the cannabis retailers, certain cannabis retailers, let me just say, were incredibly long, and it was very difficult to wait. Now,
Oh, really?
a couple of the protested cannabis retailers, including Skymint and High Life Farms, they weren't doing so well. There were no lines at their booths. So,
0 people, none.
And,
I mean,
Anton,
Anton, you saw it. You were there.
has
Is it
joined
bad
us.
product
He
or
was also
boycott?
at the event.
Boycott.
Is it bad product or boycott?
Well, I'm not sure they have great product, but I can tell you they have been subject to a boycott. Anton, your thoughts about that, though? I mean, you were there, and we've been having quite a discussion now before you joined.
There's nobody there. Yeah. And I'll back up and call out Mr. Berg there. I seen his little ignorant comment there and about not comparing alcohol to cannabis, which it's not, Chad. Peace, brother. I just don't agree with you. I don't.
Well, while it's
whatever,
true we
but-
don't compare them, the concept of not bringing in product
Yeah.
inside
Some of
the
these
event
some
is
of these
what that's
people
about.
they don't have the capacity to think outside the box. But other than that, I will say that it was a great event. Skymint and High Life Farms were completely empty the entire time. I thought that was nothing but good vibes. I think that you had your caregivers, you had your patients, you had your advocates, you had licensees, you had artists, you had just regular old community folks. Everybody got together and everybody had a great time. And as far as bringing your own cannabis, I mean, if you did the VIP tent, there was more than enough product in there, I think, to keep you high for a little bit. Plus, there was the dab bar. Plus, I mean, shit, I went through, I was at the Pure Options tent, and I walked out of there with 28 pre-rolls for $80. So that's an ounce of, and they're good pre-rolls too. It's good product, right? So I think there were deals to be had. The food was good. The people were happy. The vendors, I mean, some of those bud tenders, I don't know where they get their energy from, but kudos to them because everybody was pleasant. And, you know, it's funny because I got to hear some of the behind the scenes stuff too. And what made it more impressive is not everything always goes to plan, right? Behind the scenes. We didn't see any of that. We were just sitting there having a good time. So I think everything from just the getting into the event was easy. Getting to these different places was good. The food trucks were accessible. It was a hot day. People had access to water and just all the different necessities you'd need to have a good time. And it was a blast. I had a good time.
Yeah, I know. As I said before, I mean, putting on a good event is a checklist of all these things that Anton's just mentioned. And, you have to support these good events because it only furthers the industry, as we all know. I mean, really, all the cannabis cups we had, and I really attended so many, at least 25, 30, never any lawlessness of any kind, So you really want to make it a great, great event and really support these because it shows what our cannabis community really is,
You took a softball.
The ambulance guys at one of the High Times cannabis events, and they said it's easy money, they called it. There's just absolutely nothing to do. There's no emergency. Sometimes you get somebody who's a little disoriented, or if it's warm out, you get some heat stroke people. But there's nothing. This is on a regular night. We're running with 3 or 4 calls simultaneously when there's alcohol out there because people have fallen and are bleeding or was in a fight. And now I've got 2 guys next to each other. Both of them hate each other and they're both beat up pretty bad. So
somebody's asking about combining a vending event with commercial entities and caregivers, and that does not happen. I wouldn't mind a world in which that was allowable personally.
That'd be beautiful.
That doesn't happen. What has happened though is commercial entities coming back into like more of a caregiver or non-licensed kind of an event scenario, and they have entered their products into some cups, and so it's happened in that way. There's been a combination of those things. It just hasn't happened in the other way yet.
Well, definitely at High Times, we depended on the big ass vendors to help us with paying for the headliners, the music headliners. We gave them a lot of space. They got prime advertising. There's nothing wrong if they're a reputable company to have somebody sponsoring your event on a big time thing. I mean, it's makes perfect business sense. The CannaBash brought to you by somebody or other. So there's nothing wrong with that. Having the big players involved. I mean, they love it. They get the recognition, and they can afford it. So yeah, it's been done many times.
Yeah,
Malcolm, let's not get too supportive of these companies. Are still shutting down caregivers.
Who the fuck's being supportive of these companies? Yeah. Nobody's being supportive of these companies.
So this is another time when you're making the next leap to like supporting the event and thinking that you're supporting one of the vendors.
This is the disconnect between what they hear and what's actually being said. What we're saying is respect everybody's event. There's no reason to attack the event if you don't like a vendor. What they're hearing is you support the vendor because you support the event. There's a disconnect. That's not a cause.
These are people who care about. I just want to take away the motivation here. It's people that really give a shit about caregivers. So that part's true. Right. And yes, High Profile was there too. Yeah,
they were there, and they sucked.
Yeah. No. High
Profile did well. I'm sorry, Highlight is what I was thinking.
But you use discretion in somebody who you work with. Not every big company is bad, for Christ's sake. There's some very reputable big companies out there. I think.
Yeah. There's a lot of good,
yeah, exactly. So I'm just, let's not get carried away that everybody big and bad.
Some of these folks are just extreme in their thinking. There's an extremist mentality among a very small portion of these folks as well that you're just never going to reason with anyways. But we who were there, and I've met dozens of conversations with people who, just as you explained, Rick, they understand supporting an event, even if there was a licensee or two or three that you didn't agree with, you just stay the hell away from them, right? You don't frequent them, and that was it was a community vibe. High Life Farms, they were standing there vaping the entire time. Every time I walked by, there was 0 customers there, right? So clearly, a message has gotten out among the community, no matter what that is, whether that's the OG culture community or just the regular people of Muskegon, people were staying away, right? So I think that common sense kind of prevailed there, and it worked. It worked. There were no fights. The cops were friendly. There was no bad vibes. Nobody was an asshole. It flowed really well. It was great. And it kind of, Malcolm, like it said, it had a feel of the old school, like the Clio High Times cups back in the day, and I think with a licensed feel to it though too. So it was kind of like a 2.0 version, and it was great.
Right. Yeah. No, it's it can be done again. I mean, I've encouraged everybody. There are some people I know in Oklahoma who were very disappointed with a couple High Times cannabis cups over there, and I just encourage them, do it yourself. I mean, you guys have the wherewithal. I mean, it's not once again, it's a checklist. These events can be done if you have the financial backing. Somebody's got some money. And there's a good return on these if you do it right. High Times certainly made their money. You go into business with a major. If you can get the thing done, it can be done. But it takes some planning. There's no doubt about it. But it sounds like these guys did a wonderful job. So that kudos to them. That's great news.
Nope, I totally agree. So the fact of the matter is we've got just people that are angry, and I can understand they're angry right now. There's some threats against caregivers, and they're very, very cautious about that because of the threats in the legislature that most of us have told them about. So you can be forgiving of your brothers and sisters when they get a little angry. It's just that when your brothers and sisters don't use any tact or discretion when they attack people, or when they actually imply violence, that's the point at which we have to draw the line. And those lines were all crossed. So sometimes it's easy to forgive, but you should never forget. That's my thought.
You can disagree, but no threats. Threats are never okay in any way, shape, or form. I don't care what your cause is or what you believe in. It's never okay, ever.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
No, so we've talked about CannaBash Fest for a long time, and I think it was a worthy conversation. It's over half an hour now, and it's been the only thing we've chatted about. So I know we've got Malcolm on, and I know we other things we wanted to talk about as well.
So, the reason that we spent some time on it is because there were some intensities surrounding it, and and a lot of stuff leading up to it. It turned out to be a success. It got things rolling. It was a good place for people around there. We were at a table one time, and there were just a couple locals at the table. They were there because it was nearby, and they thought it was cool, and they were there having a blast.
We're having a great time.
Yeah, the thing is, I saw one of the comments up there. Use your discretion. Don't boycott the event. Boycott the vendor. I remember when I was, covering the glass industry for High Times, as I'd go to the Champs conventions as a journalist, and you get to learn a lot over 10, 15 years of covering the glass, and the companies that are really doing some bad things, and you stay away from them. I'm not going to cover them in High Times magazine. It's as simple as that. So I don't even don't even say hello or anything. You just move right past, and you go to the guys who are really doing a great job, the artists, so forth, so on. Support those people. So yeah, if you know somebody is a bad guy, if a company is not worthy, why would you patronize them? So,
and confine the penalty to the actual individual that you're angry at. Don't penalize all the other people who are there and who would be collateral damage to someone boycotting an event. So,
once again, these people who are putting on the event, there's a lot of money that's got to be put up in order to do this. They have thousands of dollars at stake, hundreds of thousands of dollars at stake. And to impact that, just for your own. you know, because you want to make sure that you're right and everybody knows it. It's just an absolutist Trumpian conduct.
Malcolm, boy, you are the voice of reason, my friend. That is that makes the most sense to me that I've heard out of the past week. I appreciate that perspective, my friend.